Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another live edition of the Sun Solar Panel. As always, I'm your host, Dave King, and thanks for coming by. The Solar Panel, we are always free, always fresh, and presented by the Basketball Podcast Network. We got this live interactive show every Saturday and a bunch of midweek shows during the week that you can find on your podcast app. If you're listening, make sure if you're listening on YouTube, make sure you hit that thumbs up for me. I appreciate that. And if you are listening on the podcast later on, make sure you leave a 5-star review. We've got a few new 5-star reviews this week, Zona, that I'm going to read toward the end of the show. They're a little too effusive on you, so I won't read them word for word, but but I'll definitely read them and shout out folks for leaving 5-star reviews. Zona, good morning. How you doing today?
Morning. Good to be back. Ready to talk some Suns basketball and, the disrespect that has been online, but excited.
In fact, we have a disrespectful guest on today that we are very fortunate to have on. Spencer Davies, you know him on Twitter as Spin Davies. He works with Basketball News. He's going to be coming on in a couple of minutes to talk about the league's best young cores. The Basketball News folks wrote an article on that roundtable, and Spencer was one of the dissidents who decided that the Suns' young core is not anything to recognize. But anyway, I'm giving him a hard time because he's in the back room. Let's go through real quick. Welcome everybody to the show. I appreciate you coming in. Just to get you caught up on what's happened in case you've been out of the country, haven't been paying attention, whatever it is. The Suns started their preseason. They are 1-1. They lost to the Kings, basically playing nobody on Monday, and then they beat the Lakers, basically playing everybody on Wednesday. We're going to go deep into the observations we have from the regular season, but Zona, do you have any just quick hits on what you saw in the Monday or Wednesday games? A tease?
Nothing too crazy, but I think preseason's always just there's going to be overreactions all the time. For me, I don't really care as long as everyone's healthy and they're getting reps together, especially with this team, with how familiar they already are. Nothing really stands out other than a couple of flashes like Cam Johnson's step back jumper. Yes, please. More of that. And same with Mikel's mid-range. Those are a couple of things I'm looking at. But yeah, overall, it's a preseason, so nothing too crazy.
Yeah, I want to talk about Mikel. I want to talk about campaigns, floaters, stuff like that. We'll talk about that later on in the show. We've got a whole segment for that. But we've got you guys know our format by now. We got 4 quarters in this show. The first quarter, we're going to talk about the best young cores in the league. I thought it was a really interesting article put out in Basketball News, and I'll share the link with you in just a sec. Then we're going to talk about the GM survey results. NBA GMs around the league have decided or have predicted who's going to do well this year, who are the great acquisitions in the offseason, things like that. We're going to talk about how the Suns fared in that compared to last year, and so we can see what how the GMs do basically on predicting the season. And then we're going to go through our baller talk segment in segment 3. And then in the fourth quarter is when we do our preseason observations. What have we learned from the Suns this week? That's our show for the day. Again, welcome everybody to the show. And now let's get into it. I want to add Spin Davies. So he is Spin Davies on Twitter. Good morning. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. It's more close to afternoon over by me, so I'm very refreshed. I got to sleep in a little bit today.
You guys will notice that our Saturday guests that we have on are almost always East Coast because nobody else wants to do an 8 a.m. podcast. I had to talk Zona into it.
I don't blame him. I'm not an early riser, so.
Still trying to wake up over here, but all good.
Yeah, I know. Zona's like 8. Really? But we've got a pattern here. We've been doing this. Me with different co-hosts have been doing this for about 5 years. Spencer, about this time. Actually, we originally started doing it at 7 a.m. because one of the co-hosts had a tiny babies and couldn't. That was the only hour of the day he could be distracted. And then another guy was East Coast, and he didn't want the rest of his day ruined, so he wanted it as early as possible. So it was actually 7 a.m. Arizona time. We moved it to 8 recently, and I'm used to having a Saturday to myself to be able to do whatever I want. So we're still on 8 a.m. And all these flaming ballers, that's what we call our chatters on YouTube. We are live on YouTube right now. All the flaming ballers, they're used to us. And a lot of these guys are actually out of country and stuff like that. So good morning, everybody. See, Code JJM is calling in from, or logging on from New Jersey. Blaze Megatron, I can't remember where, I think Australia maybe, Blaze. Are you from Australia, Blaze? And then we got several Australians as well. Although this is like in the middle of the night for Australia. So big, huge props to you guys. Anyway, let's get into our first quarter. Do you want me to call you Spin or Spencer?
Either one, my man. Either one. All
right. Well, I'm going to call you Spin. Spin, we got Zona, we got Spin, and I'm just Dave. So there you go, Blaze. You're from Melbourne. Wonderful. So Spin, you guys, and I'm going to put the link in our chat so our YouTubers can follow along. Whoops. I just hit the wrong button. Great, Dave. What you doing? Here we go. All right. Basketballnews.com. You guys got a bunch of great writers over there. I follow your work regularly. Whenever you guys put something out, I love the work you guys do. And you guys did a roundtable, and I actually found you did a roundtable in May on the best young cores in the league. Then you did another one just this week on the best young cores in the league. And I'm going to have to get Nikias Duncan. Nikias Duncan is also part of Basketball News. I'm going to have to get him on here because Nikias Duncan in May said the Suns had the best young core in the league. This was when they were blazing into the playoffs. And they made it all the way to the finals. And all of a sudden, Nikias is like, nah, they're not the best young core in the league anymore. They're the most successful young core, but they're not the best. But anyway, I liked Spencer's answer, and I thought I'd reach out to Spencer. You, excuse me, did not pick the Suns either. This is best young core. I understand. You're probably going to say something like that. They were my 1A or something. But tell me why, Spencer, do you think that you had said in your write-up, there's a number of teams that intrigue me around the NBA as far as youth movement is concerned. If you go 26 and under, you actually picked the Nuggets. The Nuggets who the Suns swept out of the playoffs. Tell me more. Talk to me.
They did. And let it be known, too, the criteria for young core is so kind of ambiguous and a little bit vague because when I think young core, I think one of two directions. One of the teams that's in the lottery that's building. And in that case, I think of someone like the Thunder. I think of someone like maybe even the Cavs here that I have in my hometown of Cleveland. But young success, hey, is what it is.
I grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania, so I know what it's like.
I gotcha. And then I think of young cores that are competing for a championship. And obviously the Suns fall under that category. The thing that held me back from that was that in some starting lineups and most starting lineups, you had Chris Paul and Jay Crowder. And those are two vets that are complementing your young core. Even if your young core is your best players, that's still there. In Denver, I don't see that. In Denver, I see a lot of guys who are literally about to get to their prime. Guys who are 24, 25, 26. An MVP in Nikola Jokic, who's only 26. You have Jamal Murray, who's still scratching the surface and hopefully comes back from this injury as good as he was. Michael Porter Jr. just signed a 5-year, $207 million contract extension. You bring in more and more of these guys who are around that age. Aaron Gordon, who they went and got last year, even though he wasn't built organically with the team like Phoenix, which I appreciate because that's the old school way. But still, I just look at kind of that all-encompassing age group. That's just how I define it. Now, it doesn't have to be how you define it. You can say, screw you, man. They got to the finals last year and almost won. You have got Devin Booker, you've got Mikal Bridges, you got Cam Johnson, DeAndre Ayton. That's a lot. That's a great young core. They're just complemented a little bit by the vets that were a part of that team. That's just how I look at it. It's not saying that the Suns don't have an amazing young core, because they do. And you bring up Nikias, and I think this is interesting because of what the Hawks did in their giant leap last year. They went from not being into the playoffs to going to the damn Eastern Conference Finals. So that also probably plays a factor in what his decision was. Like maybe that was something he didn't see coming before the season started. And then you've got, Trae Young, Kevin Huerter, DeAndre Hunter. We got Cam Reddish trying to come back into his own after some injuries and some rotational inconsistencies. So, I didn't even mention John Collins. Like there's a lot to pick from. But that's probably the way I would explain it on my end. I don't know. I don't want to speak for everybody else as a part of the basketballnews.com team, but that's my explanation.
What do you think, Brandon?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think it's very subjective in general when talking about young cores, because there's different, like you mentioned, there's rebuilding teams. There's teams that are kind of stuck in the middle, like the Grizzlies and Pelicans, where they're sort of trying to win, but it's also still building. And then you got the top tier teams. And to me, it's like Denver, Atlanta, and Phoenix are all that like main group that I would put in like the zone tier, basically, just because of how good they already are. They all have someone that I think can be the engine to an offense, whether it's Jokic, Booker, or Trae Young. And then they have the complementary pieces. And to me, it's like the second piece is probably the second most important thing. Obviously, the engine's the most important thing. But look at like Jamal Murray or DeAndre Ayton. And then the Hawks with Atlanta, the reason I'm a little bit skeptical to put them on Denver and Phoenix would just be because they have great depth, but is someone going to be that second option? That's where I kind of draw the line a little bit with them. But I get it. Like they have a really great young core with a lot of pieces that could emerge into that, but I'm not that high on John Collins to be like a solid number two that could, really move the needle. Love DeAndre Hunter, Cam Reddish, Huerter, all those guys. So, they're great, but I think Phoenix's core is just built a little bit better for like the long run. And I think complement each other a little bit better than Atlanta's, where theirs is kind of a little bit all over the place, but I definitely get it. I get the argument for them. And I think, age kind of gets a little bit overrated too, not taking Atlanta out of the situation. But I think age in any young core is a little bit overrated just because it's like the idea of players can be dangerous instead of like getting tangible results. So yeah, it's a very multi-layered, nuanced discussion. So it's always interesting to bring it up. You guys are brave for posting that.
and it's funny because Dave knows this. I think it was in January. My first interview of the season was actually with Mikal Bridges.
Yep.
And we talked about a lot of the stuff that, he's doing actually in the preseason. You mentioned the mid-range there before I came in. That's something that he has worked on, putting the ball on the floor, just that kind of mid-post shoot over the guy because his damn arms are so long. He's like Inspector Gadget. Yeah, dude, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, that's exactly what he reminds me of. The Warden, as some of your fans called him, I guess.
Yep.
Great guy, by the way. Love Mikal. He's good people.
Yeah, that was
I
a
love
great
Chris
interview,
Paul
by the
calls
way.
him one of his kids.
Thank you. I love it. I love it.
And I was just saying that was a great interview. You guys should go check that out if you can. Basketball News, they're killing it.
I think it still holds up too, because I mean it's pretty much the same team. So, but it's funny because you were talking about age. I was laughing. One of our new Newsline editor, headline guys, Alexander Cohen, actually said, if we're talking about young cores and just like what the best talent is, then by default it's the Mavericks because they have Luka. It was like, well, that's one guy. But then he mentioned the Spurs, and I tend to kind of agree with him too, that they have a lot of intriguing pieces. Keldon Johnson, DeJounte Murray, they bring in, a bunch of guys that they're trying to find minutes for, which I still think is a little bit of a logjam there, but I like their young guys too, actually.
Great examples. I want to talk about that for a little bit. Those are excellent examples because the Spurs have a collection of really playable talent. As Code JJM says, Atlanta has a bunch of Cam Johnsons. I feel like the Spurs also have a bunch of, which means, or Mikal Bridges's, which means they've got some really good players, but are any of them going to be perennial all-stars? I don't know, and I don't think so.
I think DeJounte Murray could be. I think that's probably and
God, it's so tough in this league. I mean,
it is.
Devin Booker barely became an all-star.
It's all situationally based too. Like, I mean, You could probably, maybe think that Keldon Johnson could get there. I mean, you just look at the guys that made the Team USA select team, got a part of that roster and stuff like that. It's not easy to predict. It really isn't, because it is all situationally based.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the other end, you mentioned the Mavericks. They have one guy, because you really can't. I mean, I don't know. I guess, is KP considered young anymore? I think for the same reason people don't consider Devin Booker young anymore, even though he's still technically 24 for a couple more weeks, because he's been in the league so long. I feel like KP has been in the news for so long that it's impossible to call him young anymore, even though he still is kind of. But they basically have Luka. So is a best young core the team with the best individual young talent, or is the best young core the team with the best collection of guys under a certain age who will be in their rotation regardless of how many wins they have? That's a big question.
I think it's the collection, personally. That's my definition of it. Whoever meshes the best, whoever finds that chemistry, whoever can go out there, and even if they're not getting, wins on a nightly basis, you can see that growth. And that's not part of the answer that I had for the roundtable. The roundtable is just kind of an encompassing of individual talent and the core together. But in the case of, rebuilding squads, like, that's what I want to see. I want to see that kind of growth in the team aspect, in the as a unit aspect. If I'm at least evaluating talent of a team, is you might not have, the best individual talent, like 3 guys that are like you said, like perennial all-stars, but making the pieces fit, putting the puzzle pieces together, that I think is the most important part. And that's what the Suns did really last year and in the bubble.
Brandon?
Yeah, pieces fitting together, I think, is very important for any young core. Like, I'll keep using Denver and Phoenix as like the prime examples. Like, you look at Jokic and Murray, their 2-man game is beautiful together. And I think that their chemistry they've developed kind of gives them an edge over a lot of teams. Then look at Phoenix. They have the engine of their offense in Booker. They have the anchor to their defense in Ayton, and the complementary glue guys like Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson. So finding that perfect balance and fit is also very important. And it just goes back to like kind of my earlier point. I think people get too caught up in the idea of like what someone could be, rather than looking at like how they actually fit on a roster and like what the end product's going to look like. Because what Phoenix and Atlanta did is what every young core is trying to do.
Yep.
And they've already done that pretty much. Like, I mean, obviously you want to win a championship, but making a run that deep, like while your team's that young, is very impressive. And
it just shows too how long it takes for it to come together.
Yeah.
And a lot of these executives and higher ups, owners, they don't have the patience. And when they see teams like that take the leap in year 3 or year 4, then another team that's in that position, 2 years prior, is kind of getting the panic button hit, and then they start all over again, and that's how you get into this vicious cycle of bad teams.
Rebuild.
Yeah. Exactly. So you have to stick with it. Like, there's no way you can do it in 2 years. 3 years is even asking a lot. But I think that is something too that we need to pay attention to, is the impatience of a lot of these executives that want to win so badly that they tinker too much instead of just let it be natural, develop all that stuff.
Yeah, I want to chew on that for a little bit, Spencer. We got some comments in the chat though, but I want to go back to the impatience in a sec, but I want to recognize the folks in our chat. Code JJM says the Hornets young core is exciting.
Absolutely.
What do you think about the Hornets young core?
Yeah, no, and you add to it, because I still consider Terry Rozier young. I think that LaMelo Ball is really something special, and I think
more special than I ever thought he was going to be in the league.
I just kind of kept an open mind there. I didn't pay any mind to any of the outside noise and taking half-court shots in the middle of an AAU game. He was just messing around. I didn't think that was going to be him, but I also didn't think he was going to be this good. You add in Miles Bridges, I think PJ Washington. We'll see what his role is this year, because it might be a little fluctuating. But again, I don't know if I would consider this a young core because they do have those pieces like Gordon Hayward there.
Mm-hmm.
They bring in someone like Kelly Oubre, who you could still consider young too, I guess. But they could definitely be in the argument for it, I think. But I do like the Hornets. I think they're going to be very exciting this year.
And there was a question about. Oh, I'm sorry, Zona. Go, please.
Oh, no, I was just going to say they're definitely a league pass team for me. They're going to be a lot of fun with LaMelo slinging it to all those high flyers. And yeah, LaMelo was someone I was very high on. I had him as my number one in his own tier. So glad that's worked out. Maybe
right.
Look smart.
Pat yourself. Exactly.
I get a lot of stuff wrong in the draft, so I'll take that one.
Fair enough.
But yeah, that team's a lot of fun. Their announcers are crazy, and like the jerseys and everything. Like it's going to be a very fun team to watch.
Yeah, we're going to be one of those league pass teams. You just got to. It's fun to watch them. In fact, I probably should go out of my way to watch them when they're not playing the Suns, so I'm not frustrated. Because every team that plays them is going to think they should beat them. And they're going to win more than they lose. And so that's going to leave a lot of teams frustrated this year. There was another question about the Bulls. I don't know about that being a young core anymore. What do you guys consider that as a young core or just a new core? Really?
That's just more of a new core. Obviously the free agency period for them was quite fruitful. You go sign and trade for DeMar DeRozan. You sign and trade for, obviously Lonzo Ball. Bring in Alex Caruso. Lonzo and Alex, they're young. You think that Zach LaVine is young too, but Vooch isn't getting any younger. He's probably right in his prime, honestly, but he's past that age that I consider a part of a young core. I think he's somewhere around 27, 28. I would assume so, at least. He has been in the league for quite a while, actually, now that I think about it. But
no, you're right. I think he's 28.
Yeah. So that's more new core. That's just probably not in the mix of the types of teams that we're talking about here.
Let's go back to the Suns real quick. So the Suns, they have as their second or first best player, Devin Booker, 24 years old. He is a two-time All-Star now. However you want to look, there's a lot of people explaining away some things with the Suns. I'm going to get to my point here in a couple of seconds, but basically you've got Devin Booker, two-time All-Star now. You've got Deandre Hayden, former number 1 overall pick, who carried a team, still just 22 years old, carried a team.
Pay the man.
Yeah, carried a team to the final. Carried the Suns to the finals. They never would have they would have been the Blazers without, Hayden, which means you're going to get swept by somebody earlier than you should. I really think so. And there's no knock against Devin Booker. I just feel like Deandre Hayden had that much of an impact. And then you got Mikal Bridges, 24. You got Cam Johnson, who's about 48, but really he's 25 in calendar years. They've got a really good young core, but Spencer, what you're saying is that you would discount them because they're not an entirely young core, right? You're saying, well, they got the veterans. They've got Chris Paul, all NBA, fifth in the MVP voting. Jay Crowder. Those were about the only two vets they had, but they were in very impactful vets.
Correct.
And for that reason, you would take them out of the top couple, 3.
They're still in my top couple. I mean, it's just one edged out the other. When I look at the Nuggets too now, like they're like only vets like Will Barton, and they just signed Jeff Green. But like,
that's
what I'm thinking. Yes, their full core is all like under 26. So that's what I looked at when I picked them. So don't kill me.
You got Denver, you got Atlanta. Look, I can go with that. Certainly, we all know that the Suns would not have gone as far gotten the wins they had in the regular season. Chris Paul was hurt in the playoffs, but he still led them all the way through that sweep of Denver, your top young core. Even though they're without Murray, the MVP should have been able to win some game, at least one game. So I think 100%. The Suns should be given credit for that series with or without Murray.
They should. And by no means also, before we go forward, does this not mean that I think that the Suns are a worse team than the Nuggets? Just a disclaimer. Right.
Where would you put the Suns' young core, Zona?
I'd probably have them in Denver in that same tier. Atlanta just below them, and then there's a pretty sizable gap as far as how I rate young cores. It's a little bit different, but if we're talking like rebuilding teams, then it's a whole different conversation. But right now, I think I'd give the edge to Phoenix over Denver, just in terms of I think there's a little bit more upside. Obviously, Denver, Michael Porter Jr. has upside as well, so can't really discount him. But I think Jokic and Murray have been in the league a lot longer than some of these other guys, and Bridges and Johnson. I think, especially with Mikal, like I think just because he's kind of known as like a 3-and-D guy, like his upside gets underrated a little bit. Obviously, it remains to be seen if he puts it together offensively, the consistency and adding that mid range. But if he really ends up being a reliable, second, third option offensively, then I think that elevates Phoenix to a perennial title contender just because of what they have in place there. So, I get the Denver argument for sure. They have a very good core and obviously an MVP to lead it. And I think that's probably the most important thing when building a core is like, how good is your top player? How far can he carry you? So that's why for me, it's like Phoenix, Booker, Denver, Jokic, and Atlanta, Trey. Those are just the three clear front runners for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. Fabio has a great comment in the chat. The Lakers are the best young core because that makes me feel not so old. What do you think about the Lakers' young core there, Spencer?
I think the Lakers going out and getting Malik Monk and Kendrick Nunn was a great move for their depth. Otherwise, probably not so young. Just a little bit, teeny bit veteran, teeny bit experience.
Rondo was joking about how he feels young.
Love it.
All right. As far as now I want to get back to the impatience part. Mm-hmm. So what I feel like is the Suns, and this will lead into the general manager survey results. I feel like the Suns, at the same time, the Suns took forever to rebuild. It took them 10 years to get back to the playoffs. But I also feel like at the same time, these general managers and other teams are pissed that the Suns didn't have to suffer playoff losses until the finals. Like every team has to cut its teeth on playoff losses. Utah losing 4 years in a row in weird ways, and not weird ways, but in disappointing ways. Portland always coming up short. You've got Milwaukee coming up short for 4 years in a row until they broke through to the finals. How is it that the Suns were able to go all the way to the final? Well, it must be a joke. It must be fake. It must be all the other teams were just too injured. It must be that luck was on their side. All these must be's, and now what's happening is the Suns are not being predicted to have the same success in year two. Spencer, as an outsider, as somebody who doesn't live in the Phoenix area, live, breathe, eat the Suns and all that, what do you think of the Suns' chances this year?
Well, they kept it together, and there's still continuity, and you still brought back everybody, essentially. So I think maybe the only place I could see a regression is maybe off the bench because Torrey Craig's over in Indiana now. Maybe that's it, But I think that them getting this experience the way that they did, they're going to have a taste in their mouth that they don't like. And, they've got, obviously, the pieces to get back to where they came from. I don't think that it was a fluke. I hate, the what if scenario. That always kind of, grinds my gears a little bit because it didn't happen. So why do we talk about hypotheticals? Regardless of who was in front of them, they played the guys in front of them and they beat the guys in front of them. Some of them very handily. So I don't think that there's a room for any kind of regression. I think that Monty Williams is an amazing head coach. I think that Chris Paul is somebody whose attitude has kind of just domino affected down to the younger guys. And now the younger guys know what it feels like to play in meaningful games. So you put that together with what they're able to do on the floor individually, and now you have this team that's really bonded and is together. They're as dangerous as anybody. I don't take any thing away from them because the Lakers added 7 players and the Nets added 3 players. Like I still think that the Suns are contenders. I mean, but I think a lot of teams are contenders. That's just how I am. I think that the league is very talented. That's just how I feel.
Talented this year.
That's how I feel.
Yeah. Zona, what do you think? Where are the Suns?
No, that's well put. And I think the one thing that, like, I would get the hesitation from like the general NBA population if the Suns were like a 6 or 7 seed last year and then had that run, like that fortunate run to the finals. I would get it. But this is a team that had the second best record in the NBA. They're, since including the bubble last year, bubble playoffs, regular season, in this last postseason, they're 73-29, which is by far the best record. It's a 71.5 win percent over the course of 102 games. So, like, I just don't get the whole, like, they have to prove it mentality that I've seen kind of thrown around. And to your point, Dave, I think cutting the line in a sense did anger some teams because it's like you have to serve your time. You have to go through these playoff battles. And the Suns just kind of their first time making the playoffs in a decade. They just get this like run to the finals and it probably pissed some people off. So I think that could be part of it as well. But yeah, I think like Spencer said, there's a lot of contenders this year. I think it's wide open. There's not, especially in the West, the Clippers aren't going to magically get healthy. They're going to be battling with the Kawhi thing all year. Denver with Jamal Murray. So to me, it's like Lakers, Jazz, and Suns are like those top 3 in the West right now in the regular season. And then come playoff time, it's going to be interesting to see how those teams stack up.
And I love them bringing in JaVale McGee and Landry Shamet, too. I forgot to mention that. JaVale, I spent some time here in Cleveland with last year before he got traded over to Denver. And that dude's a pro's pro. And talking about backing up someone like Ayton, that's a perfect fit. And then you can always use shooting. You all know that, too, with Landry. And he did some really solid defensive things for Brooklyn, too, last year in the postseason. So good addition.
Well, and the Suns are going to actually unlock his playmaking a little bit, too. He was a point guard in college that he was basically profiled as a J.J. Redick type in the pros. And it may be that's who he is. After 3 years, nobody gave him a different role, so maybe that's the only role he has. But in the first 2 preseason games, he's shown that he does have some passing ability. The Suns play a 0.5 offense, which means you got to make a decision within half a second. What are you going to do? You're going to shoot, you're going to pass, you're going to drive. And it needs, you got to be able to make quick decisions. And Landry Shamet shows that he's already shown he can fit into that kind of role. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. The thing is, his problem is that he's not big enough. And he's not big enough to defend in the playoffs, the bigger players, and he's not quick enough necessarily to defend the point guards. Plus, they have Chris Paul out there anyway, who's got to take some of the smaller guys or less offensively talented guys. So at this point in his career. So I don't know about playoff Landry, but I think regular season Landry can be very helpful to the Suns. Playoff JaVale can really be helpful to the Suns. So let's go into the GM survey results. The GMs every year, NBA.com surveys all the general managers. I've heard it's not always the general manager who takes these surveys. Sometimes they delegate it to their assistant GM or
just do this for me. I'm going to a steak dinner. You do this for me, assistant GM.
I've heard the same on the reserves for the All-Star game. It's not always the head coaches themselves who make those picks. It's sometimes they give it to an assistant coach. But anyway, it's front offices. The other NBA front offices voted. And like they will every year, they predicted that the most talented team will win the finals. Last year, 80% of the GMs picked the Lakers to win the finals because they had won the finals the year before. This year, they're predicting that the Brooklyn Nets, 72% of the respondents picked the Brooklyn Nets, 17% say the Lakers, 10% say unfortunately for the Bucks, who won the finals.
I was going to say, you talk about you guys getting disrespected.
Yeah.
You talk about the
Bucks
champs
are getting it too. Yeah.
My God.
Exactly. The 2 finals participants who still have all their players are not even close. They got 10% total. The Suns, I think, got 7% or something like that, or they got mentioned. Anyway, what do you guys think? Obviously, can you disagree? Do you think the Nets and Lakers have the best chance? Spencer.
Well, I always hate making predictions for this reason because you go through the course of an 82 game season. We're back to 82 this year, and there are just so many factors that can happen. Like, did anyone predict that LeBron would get hurt last year in the middle of the season? Did anyone predict that, Anthony Davis would go down? They could never stay on the floor together. I think when they're on the floor together, this also might take some time too, with Russ being a part of that core now. I'm interested to see who handles the off-ball duties more, because we know that LeBron's so good with the ball in his hands, but he has been shooting a lot over the last few seasons.
I really don't like that fit in the playoffs. I just don't like it.
I was gonna say I have to see it first. I have to see it first before I even and I mean all of it, like all the talent together. Same, goes for the Nets. I think they played 9 games together, the big 3 last year, like including playoffs. Like that's tough. It's tough to I can't evaluate what I can't see. You can obviously put the most talented guys together, and yes, that is like an amazing scoring combo that they have, and they do pass. Like that's definitely a misconception as well. But I need to see it. I need to see it more than at least probably 20 games to at least make a logical kind of inference from it. So I mean, yeah, obviously the Nets and the Lakers are the favorites because of the talents that they have on their team. But I think the Suns and Bucks are getting very much so a lot of I'd say they're right by.
Pat on the head. Zona, what do you got?
I agree. The Bucks are definitely getting a lot of disrespect too. Giannis as well. Just in some of like the individual player talks I've seen, seems like he's still somehow getting underrated or underappreciated. But yeah, I think Brooklyn, if they're healthy, they're going to win it all. Like that's my take. I think they're just too talented not to. But that's a huge question mark. Like, can all 3 of those guys actually stay healthy?
They're deep too. Like bringing in Patty Mills was a great move. Loved that.
Really good move. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So to me, they're the clear favorites. If like in a perfect world where everyone's healthy, Lakers the fit, like you mentioned, I need to see it. I'm not a huge fan of that fit with Westbrook, but talent is talent, and they're just trying to out talent people right now. And then that next group of teams, I think, it's just so wide open. So, and injuries are a huge factor as well. We'll see what happens with Kawhi and Jamal Murray. But yeah, for me, it's like you mentioned, let's see what happens. It's way too hard to predict that far in the future.
Well, the Lakers have so many Hall of Famers on their team. They've got to win, right? I mean, that's right.
It doesn't matter how old they are. Like 2013.
They were the All-Star team in 2014, I think it was. 13-14, yeah. Them and the Nets have all, the Lakers and the Nets have all of the starters from the 2014 All-Star game, both conferences, except for Chris Paul.
Wow. That's incredible.
Chris Paul is the only exception. In fact, I even looked at the reserve. They have more than half the reserves as well. From 2014, though. That was 8 years ago, my next playoffs.
I want to know how Vogel chops up that rotation. There's just like so many guys at the same position. Obviously Ariza just got hurt, so that kind of makes things a little easier to decide. But Melo, Bazemore, some of the younger guys, Wayne Ellington. I know they're going to want a shooter on the floor at all times. So they've got some decisions to make as far as rotation goes.
As well.
They have DeAndre Jordan and Dwight Howard, which is interesting. Like they've got some interesting rotational things to figure out.
What I thought was interesting is in a preseason game in which he was available and played 20 minutes, DeAndre Jordan against the Suns on Wednesday. DeAndre Jordan played all with the backups, and he played all the fourth quarter. I mean, if he's really a key guy, do you play him all the fourth quarter when you're down 30 in a preseason game?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Insurance policy.
My other question on the Lakers is, you look at all those guys they added, and maybe this is just me being a Laker hater, but any of the guys the Lakers added, will their last year's team really miss them?
Portland
will miss Melo,
I think.
They gave up 150 points a quarter on defense with him.
They still needed it. They still needed him spotting up shooting.
Okay, Melo.
Maybe Miami. Maybe. I know in Charlotte, Malik Monk got very inconsistent playing time, which was dumb. He should have been playing a lot more. But maybe Kendrick Nunn, he was spot starting, coming off the bench for them.
But he would disappear from the rotation for long periods of time.
He would, and then he'd play 30 minutes. Like, it was a really weird situation. Really weird situation. Yeah. Yeah.
Their depth chart's very strange. So that's going to be a storyline to watch on Zona.
Yeah, for sure.
Among the players, you talked about, again, disrespect. Last year's MVP winner by a landslide, Nikola Jokic, didn't get listed among those who should win the MVP in 21-22 by the GMs.
Not even top 3, huh?
Nope. It's Kevin Durant with 37%, Luka Doncic 33%, Giannis 13%, which is also ridiculous because he won the 2 prior MVPs, and he just scored 50 points in a closeout game in the finals. Joel Embiid, James Harden, and Steph Curry.
It's interesting.
I feel bad for the Denver fans.
It's interesting that KD and Harden are on that list when they play together, because the typical thought would be, how can you be MVP when you have like 2 MVPs on your team? I guess that's how I would look at it. Like, is LeBron anywhere on that list? Like, I don't know.
I only grabbed the top 6 that got like the percentages. I didn't grab the honorable mentions or otherwise.
Again, how we define these awards, it just drives me insane that some of these contract incentives are tied to that, because again, it's very ambiguous. It's very vague and subjective. I feel like awards shouldn't be subjective. It's very difficult to, narrow things down, but this is preseason at least. But when it comes to actually picking the awards, I do not envy the people that have votes. I don't have a vote. I mean, and I also don't want to be responsible for, pissing somebody off. That's whether it's fans or whether it's a player. Like, that's just, I feel like there needs to be a better system of award picking and stuff like that. But that's another conversation for another day.
No, it's definitely too narrative driven, and I feel like the goalposts just move every year. So I totally agree.
Yeah. Let's see. Player you want to start your franchise with today? I mean, Giannis is only 26 years old. People are forgetting, I think. And he just won the finals. He got 40% of the vote, but Luka Doncic got 43%.
That's close.
Look, Luka, great player. But can you please win a freaking playoff series before you're called the guy that you should build your franchise around? Dallas
Can he not play the Clippers this year? Can we try to make that happen? Can it not be the Clippers this year? That's literally his only playoff experience.
How about just he has the talent to beat the team in front of him?
It's only been the Clippers. Let me ask you this. In that particular poll, building a franchise around, does that mean for that season, or does that mean for a franchise? Because that's really tough. Again, we're asking ourselves questions when it's not a straightforward yes or no type of situation. Again, it's very subjective. These things, that's why I think it ruffles feathers, because you don't know how someone's going to interpret something. And that's why I hate these awards.
It's funny that there's only 30 GMs in the entire league.
Yeah.
Only 30 of them.
Yep.
You would think that they would have some kind of consensus on how they'll vote for something. If that's really it, I mean, I could see fans getting all up in their feels and players getting all up in their feels, but GMs are, I don't know. I feel like they should know better.
They do it on purpose. They do it on purpose. They want to revel feathers. It was the 20th anniversary of the survey too. So this is how they get their opinions out there, and then how maybe they're motivating their own players. You can see a GM picking against one of their guys, like trying, and then one of the guys sees it and be like, what the hell? And he's got some motivation extra because of a survey. It probably doesn't happen, but whatever.
Yeah, it seems like every year they always age pretty poorly. So I think it's just you have to remember they're humans too. Obviously, they have a lot more information than us, but I'm sure they're not sitting down taking it like it's some huge quiz that they're spending hours on. So
no, they're not. They're definitely not
spending
into it
way too much.
Yeah, exactly. We're probably spending more time analyzing,
talking about it
than all of them put together. to vote on them. All right, I'm just going to go over a couple of more, and then we're gonna go to our next segment. Best point guard in the NBA, Chris Paul tied for 4th with LeBron James. I thought it was interesting. Steph Curry got 57%. He's not a pure point guard, but he's incredible and unstoppable. Damian Lillard, Luka Doncic, and LeBron James and Chris Paul tied there. Best shooting guard in the NBA, Devin Booker is now considered by the other rival GMs the second best shooting guard in the NBA. What do you guys think of that?
Is the first James Harden? Is that okay? See, like, I don't think that James Harden's a shooting guard. Is it where they start in the lineup at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or
is it who
what they actually do? like you just said, Steph Curry's more of a shooting point guard, more than somebody who's a setup guy, but he starts at the 1. So what is it? Which one is it? Like, just put this, like, make it clear for me what I'm trying to decide. I mean, I would take James Harden over Devin Booker, no offense, but I would also consider Devin Booker a shooting guard, whereas James Harden's basically played the point, setting other guys up, picking pops, high handoffs. Devin's actually started to do that, but I would still consider him a shooting guard, secondary playmaker.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, positions are always going to be like that. I feel like the NBA is still so traditional. I mean, they're in some ways they're innovative, but other ways they're like still stuck in like the Stone Age. And I feel like positions are just like very annoying topic for me too. So I totally feel you on that.
Well, if you look at the survey, they have like Luka Doncic at small forward and point guard. They have Kevin Durant at small forward and power forward. They have Giannis, I think, for small forward, power forward, and center.
Well, apparently they didn't. It's not like voting.
Lines.
Right. It's not like the end of year voting where they had to pick one position for each guy, because Luka Doncic came in 3rd in both shooting guard and point guard.
See, that's stupid.
Split the vote.
Stupid. Luka's never played the 2 in his career. He's either started at the 3 or started at the 1.
The other argument is you are who you defend, which would make Luka Doncic a power forward. So
it's mind-boggling, dude. It's mind-boggling. Oh God, it just makes me angry.
All right, we are already at 47 minutes. I've got to do our sponsor commercial, and then we got to move on to baller talk and preseason observations. Spencer, thank you so much for joining us today. I very much appreciate your input. This has been a really enjoyable conversation. Thank you.
No problem, guys. Thanks for having me.
Have a good one.
You too.
All right. Okay. So, whoops.
I'm still here.
I did the wrong thing.
Wow. Subbed out.
I did the wrong. There we go. I think I got it right this time. Yep. All right, Zona. I'm going to do something new today, and I hope I don't really screw it up. We actually have Manscaped back as a sponsor. Can you believe it? We had 1 week they couldn't live without us. They just couldn't live without us. So you guys in the chat, everybody is just so lucky that we are going to look. Manscaped's a good product. We've been having a little bit too much fun with it. I think we're going to take it a little bit more seriously because, dating is serious. Feeling good about yourself is serious. So I'm going to live read the ad, and we're just going to play a silent movie in the background that John Voida, Darth Voida, your favorite Other Sons podcaster, put together for me. And I'm going to read through this ad, and you guys are going to buy this product at the end of the ad. And I really appreciate you guys doing it. So let me try and make this work, because I'm going to play the video and talk through it. And here we go. All right. Attention ballers. Basketball is back. Ben Simmons has 76 problems this season, but you can have none with our friends over at Manscaped. Join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped to keep their front and backcourt polished all year long. Trim with their new Lawnmower 4.0, which is included in the Performance Package 4.0, and watch the hair fade away. Get 20% off. 20% off plus free shipping with the code FLAMINGBALLERS at manscaped.com. You can see on the video here, Flaming Ballers at manscaped.com, and you can get 20% off plus free shipping. It's not raining threes, it's drizzling threes. Okay. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code Flaming Ballers at manscaped.com. That's 20% off free shipping at at manscaped.com with code Flaming Ballers. It's time to take care of your bricks this season. All right, there we go. How we doing? Did you guys all hear that? Y'all heard that really well? I hope everybody heard it.
Seems like they're loving it.
All right, good. Go buy the product. Go buy the product. It really is good. Everybody needs a little bit of control. Okay, let's move on to our third segment. Our third segment is Baller Talk. And this is where I let you guys ask us questions. You guys tell us, what do you actually want to? So says Jay. Look, Justin, I think you have some issues. Every week you have issues with the Manscaped ad. I think you just need to buy one, Justin. Figure it out. Your wife will love you for it. Okay? And otherwise, just trust us. Just trust me. Okay. We are going to move on to this Flaming Baller Talk segment. You guys get to ask us questions. Zona and I will answer whatever questions you've got, and we'll also read off your hot takes if you want. I'll share your hot takes. We do have a hot take today that we got from one of our favorite ballers, and I just got to find it here. We have a hot take from, here we go, Code JJM. In one of the comments under our YouTube video the other day, Code JJM says he has a hot take, and so that means he wants it shared on the air. His hot take is that fans will be screaming for Monty to start JaVale McGee over Ayton within 30 games. What do you think about that, Brandon?
Definitely a hot take. I'll give him that. I don't see it happening. Obviously, that's something that could happen maybe like situationally from time to time in a game where JaVale's just killing it and maybe DeAndre's in foul trouble or out of rhythm or just having an off night. I could see it from time to time. I mean, Dario closed out some games last year, so it's a possibility from like night to night, but saying he's going to take his starting spot or people are going to be calling for him to take a starting spot, pretty bold. Definitely disagree, but that's why it's a hot take.
That's why it's a hot take. Now, I looked at that one and I'm like, we've got to talk about this. We've got to talk about this. And what's going to happen is, and Code JJM is here now in the chat. Love you, man. It happened with Holmes and with Baines. It didn't happen with Sharich because he wasn't quite as effective last year as he had been in the year before. But I hear what you're saying. JaVale McGee might have a couple of really impactful games, a few impactful games. And Ayton may be going through one of his slumps where he's not really paying attention for a little while. He does that. And there will be people who say, God, you know what? Maybe we should be giving JaVale McGee the ball a little bit more, giving him more minutes out there. He's going to look really good with Chris Paul on diving to the rim. Chris Paul won't have to yell at JaVale as much as he yells at Ayton. But the Suns won't be a better team for it. I don't think there's any way. In fact, it's obvious that there's no way the Suns are a better team for it. But that wasn't Code JJM's point. His point was people will be asking for McGee to start, to send DeAndre Ayton a message. And maybe that's true. Maybe it'll happen. You know what? It'll be an excellent season if we don't do that, right? I mean, there's only a couple of guys you'll never say to give them a break. Chris Paul, Devin Booker. Doesn't matter what kind of stretch they're going through. No one's going to say to bench those guys. Okay? Everyone else is kind of up for grabs. People are already talking about Cam Johnson taking minutes over Jay Crowder. If Mikal Bridges goes through a slump where he's scoring 5 points a game for a couple of weeks, guess what? A lot of people are going to say, give Cam the ball. You know, these kind of things are going to happen. So I don't think Ayton is someone who is immune to that just because he had such a great year in the playoffs doesn't mean he's going to be great all 82 games of the season.
Yeah, no. And I think it's a good thing if Ayton's not, if that conversation never comes up, that means he's done something well. So, he's still young. So I think there will be those lapses where if it's like a road game against like the Cavs or Orlando or some bad team where maybe he's like taking a night off. But if it's a consistent thing, then that's something you should be worried about. I don't think it will be. JaVale is definitely going to have those moments. So we already saw it just in that last Lakers game where, he's really impressing fans. So, yeah, like you mentioned with Paul and Booker, they're not going to come out. And we're hoping Ayton gets to that level where it's like, you need this guy and you just got to rely on him.
I muted myself. Hey, Flaming Ballers. That was the one question I got before the show started. Do you guys have any other questions for us? Anything else you want us to cover before we get into preseason observations? I don't think I saw anything else in the chat.
Will Landry Shamet take Devin Booker's starting spot?
Oh, yeah, right. Will we be asking for Landry Shamet to take campaigns minutes at some point?
That could be something, yeah. That could be, because Payne's very streaky. So if he's having a cold stretch and Landry's shooting the hell out of the ball, then it's definitely something that could happen. I think it will happen at some point, but it's a good problem to have because those are two, to me, that's probably the best, reserve backcourt in the league. I'd have to look more into it, but it's tough to find one better.
Yeah, the Chris Paul has already mentioned. He's already mentioned in a post game. I think it was Wednesday, post game, that he's looking forward to. Maybe it was a practice one earlier in the week. Sorry, but he's already talking to Monty about playing him and Booker and Shamet together.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of 3-guard lineups this year.
Yeah, because Booker can slide to small forward for periods of time. He's 6'6", and he's very functional defensively. And when he's really focused, he can be good defensively, Devin Booker. So I don't have a problem with that. I can see that happening when they need to get some offense because they got to run Shamet off of screens and things like that. And one thing Booker is really, really good at, as we saw this past year, is actually setting screens that we wouldn't have considered in the years prior when they were rebuilding. I don't know if he set a whole screen in 5 years, but last year he was setting screens left and right because his guy was hugging up on him all game. And so you could take 2 players out with one screen if you're Devin Booker. I love that. So that'll be a really interesting campaign. So let's move on to preseason observations. I want to start with, unless you want me to go, but I want to give you the chance to start on what do you think is your biggest takeaway so far from preseason, Zona?
Just how easily, and we kind of knew this was going to happen just based off the types of guys they are, but just how easily JaVale McGee and Landry Shamet have transitioned. It seems like they've been there for a while now. And I think they're both going to be fan favorites off the bench just because of, their certain skill sets they bring. And that's why we're already getting comments like, JaVale starting over DeAndre. And I'm sure the whole like Shamet over Payne thing will be something that comes up later as well. But yeah, just looking from top to bottom, it looks like obviously the Lakers game's one game and LeBron and Westbrook didn't play. Booker didn't play. But there is definitely some encouraging moments. And it just looked like, the Suns that we all know and love, just moving the ball, getting out in transition, sharing the ball. But yeah, I think just JaVale and Landry, like in the general NBA, has been a little bit underrated, I think. The Suns Twitter is pretty high on both those guys. They have been all year, but it seems like just whenever you're talking about offseason additions, those guys are kind of getting glossed over. But in the regular season, they're going to help out a ton.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I talked to a Nets podcaster who watched Shamet all last year. And of course, what we do in this world, Zona, is we look at when guys are on our team, we look at who they played for before to see how they're going to fit. So he had done some scouting from Shamet when he was with the Clippers and stuff. And what he said, I believe his name was Mike, what he said was that Shamet was way underutilized in Brooklyn because Shamet is a run off a screen guy. Like as a rookie with the Sixers, he was basically put into as a rookie with a small role. He was put into like a JJ Redick run off of screens, catch and shoot, and early on with the Clippers, he was doing that. But then toward the end with the Clippers, when they had Paul George and Kawhi Leonard kind of manhandling the ball all the time, and then with the Nets, Shamet became just a spot up standstill guy. And that's not his best game. Sure, he can make open standstill threes, but he's really good off the bounce. Not off the bounce, but off the screens, and then stopping and catching and shooting. And I'm really looking forward to seeing some of that. I like somebody on Twitter put this in my mind the other day, and now I can't get it out of my mind. It's the Cam Sham Jam lineup. 2 Cams, 1 Sham, and then JaVale McGee with the jams. What do you think of that?
I like it. It's definitely something that I think their bench, like if there's like a best bench award, I think they would get it. Like their second unit is going to bury some other second units. Like it's going to be a lot of fun. I think that's underratedly their greatest strength that isn't really talked about enough. Because to me, both Cams are like such luxuries to have off the bench, and then you factor in just Shamet, like you mentioned, the way he's used, especially in Brooklyn, where they already have Joe Harris, who can kind of fill the role that he would hypothetically play in a way, just as spacing the floor. So there were times where he was kind of redundant out there in a way with Harris, and they obviously have the big three. So I think in Phoenix, he's going to be better utilized, and we'll see more of that playmaking and maybe some more step back threes, pull up threes, stuff like that, because I think he's got a little bit more than just being a spot up guy or someone you could run off screen. So definitely looking forward to that as well. And just Mikel's handle is the main thing I'm looking at, because I think the pull-up jumper has always been pretty efficient, like when he gets there. But how does he get there? Like consistently, it's going to start with the handle. So that's something he's mentioned a few times just in the preseason, just, that he's been working on this whole offseason. So that's definitely another area to watch.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to that. What other kind of observations did you have from preseason? You want to say any others before I go on to mine?
Without Booker, obviously there's going to be some times where they're going to struggle to create offense. But overall, I thought, especially in the Lakers game, that it looked a lot more fluid than you'd expect this soon. But I think that's part of just the continuity, which, that word's going to be overused to the point to where I'm going to hate saying it, but it's true. So,
well, we weren't able to say it for 10 years. So it's nice to be able to say it now. This is basically Monty's, in my opinion, this is Monty's 4th year with the team, even though it's only the 3rd official year. But because of the pandemic break, he's had 4 training camps now. And several of his guys have been here the whole time. So I really think Monty is just putting more and more wrinkles in. They looked so smooth on Wednesday, so good. And they didn't even have Booker in the lineup. What I saw was really interesting. I saw Mikel getting some of the Booker actions. So where he was running around and catching and shooting in the mid-range or dribbling into the mid-range, doing a lot of the Booker role. And I thought that was really interesting, because then you really need somebody to be able to recreate what Booker has done. And I'd personally rather have it be Mikel than Landry Shamet, because Mikel's going to be under very, very soon, under long-term contract. So I love that. I love Mikel's new mid-range. He took 18 shots on Wednesday, only made 7 of them, but his shots were clean. They were open. He just didn't drain them. And last year he drained them when he was open. So I'm not worried about him putting them down. Hey, Code JJM, thank you so much for the donation, $19.99. Sweet. Thank you. Anybody who wants to donate to us, we need the money. We always could use money. Everybody needs money in this world. Thank you so much. And we also have 2 new members today. Those are monthly members. They're now officially Flaming Ballers. I want to thank you guys, Thomas Herndon and Lorianne. Thank you so much for joining up today as long-term members. And Code JJM, thank you for the one-time donation so much. Great show. Yep. Have a good day, Code JJM. Jim? Anyway, thank you. Thank you for that donation. The other things that I noticed in preseason, campaigns floaters. You notice he was putting those up this week in the in-between game, and he didn't do any of those this past year. I had an interview with Cam on media day, and I actually asked him about that. I said, what are you going to do to change up? He's like, man, I can tell that people are scouting me now. The GM, they know, the teams are scouting me. They know if I'm going to take a three, I take it. If I'm driving, I'm going all the way to the rim as fast as I can, and I'm reaching out. Because if you guys saw, especially in the finals, the Bucks were timing him, right? The Bobby Portis, Brook Lopez, and Giannis were all timing his layup, no matter how snaky he got. They knew exactly where the ball was going to be. And so I really think that it really would help him to do a mid-range game. And so he laughed and he said, man, that's what I came into the league with. I was all floaters and threes when I came in, but everyone coached the floaters out of me. So I went to layups and threes. Now he's bringing the floaters back, and they looked pretty good. I didn't get to watch Monday's game because of all the, it wasn't on TV, and I don't do illegal streams. But on Wednesday I did, and his floater looked really good because you got to leave the defense guessing. If they think you might pull up, then they can't be so perfectly timed on your hard drive on a layup. And if he's got that hezzy going where they don't know what he's going to do even while he's in the middle of it, that's just really makes him a lot more unstoppable offensively. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that was a great interview too. Go check that out. I think it's a few episodes back. You threw that in the media day episode.
Yeah, on the end of the media day audio. Yep. Because I didn't get video with him. Otherwise, I would have posted it here.
Yeah. Yeah, so go check that out. But I think the floater game is definitely he needs it because I don't think just the way he shoots, it's like kind of awkward, and like getting into his mid-range jump shot would take a little bit too much time. So I think that's sort of why that part of his game is missing right now. So having a floater to kind of balance that in-between game is huge. It's the next step in his offensive development, I think, either a floater or mid-range. But I think if he can get that down consistently, that'd be awesome. And to go back to what you said about Mikal, I think anytime he shoots 10 plus field goals a game, that's a win. We need to convince him, like, just keep shooting the damn ball. Because like there's games where he'll just take like, 4 or 5 shots, and I'm just like very frustrated by that. Same with Cam Johnson at times. He'll just be a little bit too selfless. So those two guys, their aggression is like the main thing I'm looking at in the preseason, along with Sticks, who, I want to see him just, start showing that he belongs and play a little more physical and stuff like that. So I think aggression is the main thing to look at for any young guy in the preseason.
Absolutely. Another observation that I had, this wasn't an observation. This was a comment that Monty said after Wednesday's game. I had pointed out that it looked like Jalen Smith may have found a niche as a garbage guy. In the first half of the Lakers game, Jalen Smith was really good at diving toward the rim to either get putbacks or dump offs for dunks, or he had one of each, and then getting rebounds, offensive and defensive rebounds. So that could be the kind of role he could be good at. And so I asked Monty about it. He said, yeah, absolutely. If he's going to get on the court, it's going to be in that kind of role for sure. And I love the fact that he's doesn't hesitate on taking threes. Monty said this, he's great at letting the threes fly when he's in the right position. But then Monty said, however, I'm looking at a 9-man rotation this year. And so if any one of those guys is going to get in, they're going to have to really force the issue. I don't remember exactly the words. I didn't transcribe it word for word, but basically he said, we got 9-guy rotation. So there's your Cam Sham Jam bench right there. 2 Cams, Landry Shamet, and JaVale McGee. That's your whole bench right there for unless there's injuries. So guys, the other guys are just going to get in when they can. Now, of course, Monty finds ways to get guys to play, but he's not mixing and matching on guards this year. Like last year, he didn't know. Campaign started a little slow. And he had some injury issues. Of course, anybody can go through injury issues, which mucks that up. But campaign started a little bit slow. Etuan Moore got a month run there. Langston Galloway got a month run there. This year, they don't have to worry about that because Landry Shamet is going to really take over that role unless he goes through a really slow period. But he is extremely consistent, 40% three-point shooter. He doesn't really slump Landry Shamet. He's not hot and cold like Jay Crowder is. So I'm curious on those 9. What do you think about not giving minutes to anyone outside the top 9 unless there's injuries?
Yeah, I think a 9-man rotation is perfect in the regular season. So I was definitely glad that he said that. If you get those 10 or 11-man rotations, it just gets a little too clunky and hard to like keep up with like consistency or guys knowing what their role is going to be. So to me, that 10th man right now is Abdel Nader. Jalen Smith could be if he keeps improving and proves that he belongs in the rotation. But to me right now, Nader is a guy that he's that next man up. So it's especially he threw him in the playoffs like after missing 3.5 months. So there's definitely some trust there.
Yeah, he loves Abdel Nader.
Yeah, so I think he's
first injury replacement right there.
Yeah, he will suffer a little bit from the 3-guard lineup. So I think minutes wise, like it's going to really clog up the opportunity for him. But
yeah, absolutely. All right. Any other final thoughts on preseason so far? It's only been 2 games, only one of which they played real hard. But did you see anything else you wanted to point out?
No, nothing really preseason wise. So it's a preseason.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
All right. Well, we have kept you guys. We are over in 11 minutes already right now. I wanted to point out, we're going to wrap this up. I wanted to point out, make a big thank you also the new 5-star reviews that we got this week. Granted, everybody loves that you've joined the pod, and I would love to read them word for word, but it just makes me a little uncomfortable from all compliments. But definitely, Zona, they love you being on the pod. We got a 5-star review from 290 in actually Apple Podcast Germany, from greetings from Berlin, and Tabak on the U.S. Apple Podcast. Love the show, and David loved to contribute on the show. He's labeled himself Zona 74. So I don't know. Look, one of the perks if you're a member is that I'll reach out to you and ask you for input on what segments we should do, what topics we should bring up in Baller Talk. So for sure, you get first dibs on doing that. And then finally, Mike Shumway left us a 5-star review. Solar panel never left, even though we've had some turnover. I think we're better than ever. I love that, Zona. I love that you've joined the team. Thank you so much. And I've been so thrilled with how many guests have said yes over the past few months. We didn't do a ton of guests in the old days. We had some guests, but we didn't do a ton of them. When we did have guests, it was probably a majority of me getting them. I'm loving getting guests now. Spencer Davies was great today. We've had guests on the midweeks and all that. Zona's going to be joining me on some midweeks. We're going to have some guests. Zona's going to bring in again. We got a really cool guy that we're going to have on a pod in the next week or so, who has a great YouTube channel and breaks down games. And he's going to explain to us how the Suns are so good at what they do by explaining how they run their actions and stuff. I really love that kind of talk. So we got some great shows coming up. Subscribe to us on the podcast. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Everything we do is for you guys and just for the joy of being here with you. I really appreciate it. Zona, tell us where they can find you and promote any kind of work you're working on right now, because you have a whole other life besides solar panels. So tell us about it.
Yeah, appreciate that. You can follow me on Twitter just at ZonaHoops _. Check out my work at zonahoops.com. Have my site there, and obviously do some words at Bright Side of the Sun as well. So all that good stuff. But yeah, I appreciate the kind words, and I'm happy to join the show. Looking forward to, like you said, we have some really great guests lined up, so it's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yes. All right. My name is Dave King. You can find me at Dave King NBA on Twitter. You can find all my written work, and I've been there for 10 years now, brightsideofthesun.com. We have a great group of writers, including Zona. And it's a wonderful site to be a part of. And we've, we do great game coverage, during the week. So you'll always know what's going on with the Suns on the pod, on the website. And then we'll be back here every Saturday for live shows and, midweek pods. When they pop into your podcast feed, go look for them. And then, I also post the video version of them if I get the video on the YouTube channel as well. So you guys can see it either way. Really appreciate all your support. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.